Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be kind of a lengthy one, I think, but I want to recap all of the books that I read in July. So this year I've been reading something like 20 to 30 books on average per month. So in the future I may try to split these videos into two sections to kind of keep it manageable, but for this one I'm just gonna go all in, so buckle up guys, it's probably gonna be a long one. So I'm going to organize this, I think, by going from lowest to highest rating, so let's just jump right in. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Maze Master by Kathleen O'Neill Geer. This was my only 1-star of the month, but man, I did not like this book. It was described to me as kind of like an adventure book like Dan Brown or James Rowland's, but I was so incredibly bored. I hated everybody. I had like no idea what was going on, and it's a pretty short book, so I just kind of like tried to push through it as fast as I could. I would not recommend this book. It was just awful. So let's just not say any more about that and put it away. So now I'm going to talk about some of the 2-star books that I read this month, or in the month of July. First I will talk about Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. I was really looking forward to this book. It was supposed to be like a magic school murder mystery, and I was just incredibly bored. I wasn't motivated by any of the characters. I thought the overall mystery was like really bland. So this was just really disappointing for me. Like, yeah, it was okay. I would not ever reread it. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it. The next book I'm going to talk about is Outpost by W. Michael Geer, and it turns out this guy is actually the husband to this woman. So I think maybe I just do not like their writing styles. This one is like a sci-fi book where they're like stranded on a planet or something, and there's supposed to be like a murdery mystery on an abandoned ship, which is like where this Tower of Bones comes in, because there's some sort of death cult. But I mean, this I think came up at some point. I couldn't really tell you. I just started skimming the book because I was bored. This could have been so much better than it was, and but maybe they're, again, like their writing style just isn't for me, because some people do seem to really like it on Goodreads. So I don't know if I would necessarily recommend that. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Daughters of Temperance by Catherine Howe. This came in my unplugged book box. It was supposed to be like a witch story where the husbands of, or the fathers, I guess, of this line of female witches consistently die because there's like a curse on the family. So this woman is like trying to prevent that from happening to her own boyfriend. I don't know. I was just kind of bored. Again, I didn't love it. I didn't really like any of the characters. I just wasn't really motivated by it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this is a sequel or like a spinoff to the Physic Book of Temperance Dane, I want to say, who like kind of does come up in this. So I think, I don't know if this would have been better had I read the first book. But I would say if you did read the first book and enjoyed it, I would maybe consider picking this up, but otherwise, pass on it. The last of the 2-star books that I'm going to talk about is The Empress Game, Exile's Throne by Rhonda Mason. So this is the 3rd book in a trilogy, and this was just exceptionally disappointing. I loved both of the other books. They're up there. Gave them 4 out of 5 stars. So the first one I think is like a gladiator sort of game where the main character, who's also named Kayla, so that was a little special. That's part of the reason why I picked it up. But anyway, in this world, there's like a competition, like gladiator style, for to become the next empress. And so the main character Kayla impersonates one of the contenders for the Empress Game. It's like sci-fi. There's like a viral disease, which I love that stuff. But this one was just super disappointing, and I did read that the author kind of wasn't really sure how to tie it up, and I think that does show. Just like nothing really happened. It was a lot of filler, and this was just such a disappointing ending for this trilogy. So I think, I don't know if I would reread this again. I think I would reread the first 2 books of the series and just pretend that this doesn't exist at all. Now I'm going to talk about some of the 3-star books that I read. So these were books that I did enjoy, maybe not necessarily books I would reread. First one I'm going to talk about is Never Look Back by Allison Galen. So this is an arc that I won in a Goodreads giveaway from the publisher, so thank you, but obviously all opinions are my own. So I thought the blurb of this was much more interesting than the book itself. Basically, it's kind of like one of the main characters is the host of like a serial podcast where he like investigates serial killers, and he ends up contacting this woman and saying like, hey, your mom was actually like one of these serial killers. So that was, I thought that was a really intriguing plot premise, but in execution, it was kind of bland. The main guy character was awful. Like, I really did not like him. I liked the main female character more or less, but I thought the most interesting part was when it actually went over the diary entries of this woman's mom, who's the serial killer, and I thought that was by far the best part. So I don't know if you like the format where it kind of goes back and forth between like flashbacks of diary entries versus present day, and trying to figure out this murder mystery, maybe pick this up. I don't think it was anything particularly spectacular, but I did enjoy it. Not one I would reread. Next book I'm going to talk about is Whisked Away by Melanie Summers. So I think this is actually the second book in this Paradise Bay series. I haven't read the first one. I'm not sure I really will. But what got me about this is basically like the main character is a cook, and her family owns these hotels on this island. And she gets hired as a private chef for this author who is going to this island to like hunker down and write his book series. And what got me here was the author is, I think they call it a Clash of Crowns or something. I mean, it's clearly a Game of Thrones spoof, but it was like, the producers of the hit TV show are pushing him to write this book, and otherwise, if he doesn't finish the series, the screenwriters are going to adapt it. Oh no! So I thought that was particularly funny, given how the Game of Thrones saga, I guess, ended in terms of the TV show. So this was funny. I did enjoy it. I'm not sure it's necessarily one I would reread though. But if you're also a Game of Thrones fan and kind of want some romance, just a fun little book series or book, I would maybe pick this up. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Nine, which is the first book of the Thieves of Fate series by Tracy Townsend. It's like a magical book that is like written by the gods or something, and there's 9 people that God, I guess in this context, is following for all of humanity, and so their actions, I guess, determine the fate of all of humanity. So that was a pretty interesting premise. Execution was kind of meh. I did enjoy it, but I found myself skimming a little bit of it, so it's not one that I would reread. But maybe check out the reviews, because some people did really like it. Some, maybe it's just it didn't quite work for me, but maybe it would work for you. The next book I'm going to talk about is Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. So I bought this when it came out and just kind of have been procrastinating on reading it until this month. This is not like her usual books. It follows a set of twins, Roger and Dodger, who are basically the embodiments of math and reasoning, language, I guess. This was just one of the most bizarre books I've ever read. I found myself enjoying some parts, but other parts being like, oh dear God, is this over? It's it's something like 500 pages. Is that right? Yeah, 520 pages. And I was like, I need this to be done. So I don't think it's one I would reread. I think it was just too bizarre for me. Some people really liked it though, but I think if you're not really into magical realism or just bizarre books, I've heard this compared to The Library at Mount Char, just in terms of the weirdness factor. So if you liked that, maybe you would like this, but it's just not my thing. So the next book I'll talk about is The Lost City of the Monkey God by Douglas Preston. So he is a writer that I kind of enjoy. He writes some adventure novels by himself and also with Lincoln Child. But this is a true story of his exploration into the lost city of the Monkey God. I did enjoy it. I thought some of it was really fascinating. Particularly, he ends up contracting an incurable disease. So from that standpoint, I really liked that part, because I'm just really into infectious diseases. But I thought this was an interesting story overall. There were some parts that I was like, I do not care at all. Oh my God. But it was just a quick read. Maybe pick it up from the library if this sounds interesting to you. We have The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This has been out for a while, but I'm just now picking it up. It's, a kind of a unique zombie story. Kind of, I've seen it compared to The Passage, but I thought The Passage was way better than this. There was nothing wrong with this. I did enjoy it, but it just wasn't anything special. I am interested in seeing the movie, though. So the next book I'll talk about is Layover by David Bell. I did also win this in a Goodreads giveaway. This is, I think, an ARC. But I've talked about this in, I think, one of my videos, maybe the booked or the new to booktube tag. But this man meets a woman in the Atlanta airport. They get to talking in the airport, and she kisses him and is like, "I'm never going to see you again." And he like ends up following her around after discovering that she's a missing person. So the mystery wasn't something I was expecting, but in terms of that was nice. But I just kind of thought the main character was a little weird. Like, I would never just follow some random stranger that I had never met before, like, around and go to all these lengths that he goes to keep in contact with her. So that was a little ridiculous, but overall I did enjoy it. Again, not something I would reread though. The next book I'm going to talk about is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. So I also got this in the Unplugged book box, I think for June, but I didn't read it until this month. But basically, I mean, it's a male-male romance where one of the princes of England and the first boy, I guess, of the U.S. End up falling in love together. So it is pretty political. I did and did not enjoy that aspect. I thought, like, I agreed with a lot of what was going on, but at the same time, I was just kind of bored in section. I did end up, feeling all the feels at the end, so I did enjoy it overall. A lot of people really do love this book, so it's worth checking out, certainly. But maybe from the library. The next book I'm going to talk about is Time's Convert by Deborah Harkness. So this is like a spin-off sort of book, I guess, behind her Discovery of Witches series, which I have read and enjoyed. So this kind of goes back and forth between past and present. It follows Marcus when he's in the American Revolution, and to be honest, I thought a lot of those sections were just really dull. I just, I'm not really into all that much history, so getting into some of that, I was like, is this going to end? But it went back and forth between that and the present day, where one of the other characters, Phoebe, is becoming a vampire, and so that it follows her change and just like, her experience. So that sped things up quite a bit. And not all parts following Marcus were bad. It just wasn't my favorite. There's also some things interspersed with Diana and Matthew. And I do enjoy those characters, so that was fun to visit them and see what their lives have become after the end of the third book. The next book I'm going to talk about is Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. So this is one of the books that I picked up from Book Outlet, but it's just kind of like an easy to read YA pirate fantasy book. The main character is obviously the daughter of the Pirate King, and she's trying to find a map to treasure, basically. There is quite a bit of romance. I thought the main character was at the same time kind of irritating, but also entertaining. Some of her behavior, I was just like, oh my god, this is too much for me. I did enjoy it overall. I don't know if I would necessarily, I certainly would not have bought it at full price, so I'm glad I picked it up at Book Outlet. I'm kind of interested in reading the sequel, Daughter of the Siren Queen, but I think it might be something I pick up from the library. We'll see if Book Outlet has it for super cheap. I would kind of describe this as like a trashy sort of pirate book. Not the highest literary masterpiece I've ever read, but I did enjoy myself. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Voodoo Killings by Christy Cherish. They're in Seattle, and the main character can raise zombies, so I thought that was really interesting. I do like urban fantasy quite a bit, so this was, a promising start to an urban fantasy series. I did, obviously these are all the 3-star books, so I liked it, but I was also kind of confused. Like, the author kept using this phrase, like, pulling a globe, and I was like, I literally do not know what that means. Maybe I just, missed it when she explained it, or she didn't explain it at all. So that was a little confusing. But yeah, so basically, somebody is murdering zombies and voodoo practitioners in Seattle, and so she's trying to figure out what's going on and, solve things and prevent herself from being killed. I liked it. I thought it was a fun book. I don't know how I feel about picking up the other books in this series. I don't know, maybe if I can also get them on Book Outlet, I will. but it, wasn't the most exciting urban fantasy series I've ever read. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This is the first book in, I don't know if it's actually a series or just like a set of novels that are interconnected. But The Bride Test is the next book in this series. So basically it's like a romance, female, male, where the main female character has autism, and she is an econometrist, I believe, if I remember that correctly. But so basically what, a lot of people really love this. What got me to actually buy it is I read like a little sample on Amazon, and in the sample it mentions that the main character uses SAS, which is like a statistical program that I actually use. So I was like, oh, okay, here we go. That sounds fun. But yeah, so like, I thought it was pretty good. Some of the dialogue was a little cringy for me, particularly with like between the main female and male characters. Like when he's teaching her how to be in a relationship, I was just like, some of this is just kind of awkward to read. But overall, I did like it. I liked how it ended. I think it's nice to have some representation for autistic people because they are people. So this was an enjoyable book. I don't know if I would buy The Bride Test or just pick it up from the library, but I do kind of want to continue reading this series and see what happens. Next book I'm going to talk about is Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. So this is the first in the Wayward Children series. I think I may have talked about this in my last video, in one of my previous videos. But I did like it, but I also thought it was too short. Like, it just sort of ended, and I was like, I want more to this story. I have read the second and third books in this series now, and it's the same sort of thing. I like it, but I want more. Like, I just think that not much has really been developed in this short little novella. So that's, a little disappointing. But I did enjoy it, so, and like a lot of people really love this series, so maybe you will too. Now I have The Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. So this is like an Ursula origin story, and I liked it, but I thought a lot of the book was just filler. I was bored, and I was like, not much is really happening. But I thought the ending like really clinched it, so that I think was what made it a 3-star book for me. I am not quite sure if I want to pick up the second book. That may be one I borrowed from the library because, I did think it ended really strong, and I was like, I would like to continue reading, like, this part onwards, but the first part, yeah, like I said, it was okay. Nothing spectacular, but, like, I do wish more had been developed there, but, it is what it is. The last book of the 3-star books that I'm going to talk about is Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. So this is a Leia as a teenager story where there's politics. She has her first love. She's like just finding out that her parents are, part of the rebellion. So that was really interesting. I think maybe it just didn't quite work for me as a YA book. Like, I think Bloodline was much better because that is an adult Leia and like an adult book. I think, I think it's just some of the YA, like, first love stuff. I was like, yeah, okay. I don't know if I really need this. But I do really like Star Wars. This was still enjoyable. Claudia Gray is a pretty good writer. So if you're into Star Wars and want to know more about Leia as a teenager, maybe pick this up. But otherwise, I would recommend reading Bloodline instead if you're, not quite into the YA books anymore. Now I'm getting into some of my 4-star reads. So the first one I'm going to talk about for this section is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. So this was actually a really unique YA fantasy book where the main character works in a library, and these books, like the grimoires, can basically become like evil creatures, which I thought was just so unique. I've never read anything like that before. And just some of the descriptions of these books becoming monsters was just like really, grotesque and like fascinating. I was like, oh my god, that's a little horrifying. So in this world, sorcerers are kind of evil, and they like partner up with demons basically. So she ends up getting exiled from her library and has to team up with a sorcerer to, fight what's going on and like solve a mystery. There is a bit of romance. It is a YA book, but I really liked this. I thought this was super unique. So if you're into reading like books about books, I would definitely pick this up. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Star-Touched Queen by Roshni Chokshi. So this is the first book in this series, where it's basically like sort of mythological base. The main character has to solve like a mystery of who she is and what's going on in this realm. She's the princess of a kingdom, and basically she's like thought to be cursed, cursed by death, I think, or touched by death. So she, I don't know, it's just like really beautiful writing, and I did enjoy this. This has been out for quite a while, and I think a lot of people really like it. I also read A Crown of Wishes by Roshni Chokshi, which is, I guess, sort of like a sequel or companion novel to The Star-Touched Queen, following the main character in the first book's sister. And I thought this was also really, beautifully written. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I think both stories are really excellent. They have different qualities though. Like this one, the main character is more like a fighter. So that was fun. I just really liked both of these books. I think her writing is really beautiful. It's like, it has like a mythological feel to it, like I said. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. The next book I'm going to talk about is Night Struck by Jenna Black. So this is sort of an urban fantasy set, I think set in Philadelphia. But basically the main character like sort of invites evil into our world, unbeknownst to her. Like an evil creature basically like tricks her into giving her blood, which opens a portal of like evil fae creatures that begin to take over the city. So this was really good. I mean, it is YA, so there's like a romancy subplot, and like the first part of it was a little like high schooly, but after that it got super good. I was genuinely freaked out by some of the descriptions of this book, and I had read it at night and I was like, I need to just lock all my doors and windows and like barricade myself in my house. So I think that's a good description. It's like a fun urban fantasy book. I don't know if I'm going to pick up the second one in this series because I've read that it just like really goes downhill from here. So I may just leave this as like a little standalone urban fantasy book, but we'll see. And I know the second one is on Book Outlet, so I may, we'll see if it's super cheap. I may actually end up getting it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Saga Volume 9 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. So I've been reading this for quite some time. It's an interesting graphic novel series where, basically we've got two factions fighting against each other, like a more like sci-fi versus fantasy, I guess, factions. But like, I don't want to spoil this, but like, holy shit, the ending just came out of nowhere, and I was so surprised. I think this is a really fun series. I would kind of like a warning, I guess, or just, like, if you're like, I don't know if my kids should be reading this, maybe take a look at it first, because like some of the scenes are pretty explicit. So, just content warning, I guess. The last of the 4-star books that I'm going to talk about is Salvation Day by Callie Wallace. So I again talked about this in one of my previous videos. But there's like a what they think is a virus that kills all these people on a ship except for one kid. The kid that survives, grows up, and we follow him 20 years later. And he and this woman who's trying to find like a safe place for her family end up having to like team up together to figure out what is this virus, what happened on this ship originally, like why are all these people dead. So I thought this was like a really fast-paced thriller. Again, with the infectious diseases, I just love that. Just eat it up. So if you're looking for like a fun infectious disease thriller book, I would definitely pick this up. So now we're getting into some of the 5-star books that I read this month. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Recursion by Blake Crouch. So I read Dark Matter by him 2 or 3 years ago, I think. And so that kind of explored the concept of time. So Recursion explores the concept of memory. So basically, there's like technology that allows people to relive some of their memories, but then people end up having this like false memory syndrome where they experience different lives and also basically like have several sets of memories, and this makes people go a little crazy, and a lot of people start killing themselves. So part of this is, trying to figure out why this is, and at the same time it talks about like the technology that goes into reliving your memories. So this, I don't want to get too much into to avoid spoilers here. But this was super good, super fast-paced. I loved it. The next book I'll talk about is The Lost Plot by Genevieve Cogman, and this is the 4th book in the Invisible Library series, which I've talked about quite a bit. So this is like an urban fantasy series where they're sent to 1920s New York, Prohibition era, and there's, again, dragons versus fae. They're trying to pick up a rare book. It's a really fun series. I would highly recommend it if you want like a unique urban fantasy and, books about books. Next book I'll talk about is Protect the Prince by Jennifer Estep. So this is the 2nd book in a series. I think that the series is called Crown of Shards. But this is the sequel to Kill the Queen, and I think I've maybe talked about both of these, but this, just picks up from where the 1st book left off. It's a pretty fun magic system. The 1st book had gladiators. This kind of explores more of the magic, I think. This is a really good romance/fantasy series that I would highly recommend. Last book I'm going to talk about today, and just in general the 5-star category, is Howling Dark, which is the 2nd book in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio. So fun fact, there was a GalaxyCon, which was like Comic-Con essentially, in Raleigh last week, I think, and the author was here because he is a local to me author, and I got him to sign my book. Yay! But yeah, so that was really exciting to meet him. He was super nice. But this is just, again, the sequel to Empire of Silence, where it's like a sci-fi series kind of reminiscent of Name of the Wind, where the writing's really beautiful. This kind of scales it up a bit. So we're, in space. There's just a whole bunch going on. There was a lot of stuff that I did not predict happening. So, I do not want to spoil that, because it's a really great series that I highly recommend. So I actually forgot about 2 other 5-star books that I read, so let's just get into those. I read Educated by Tara Westover. So I borrowed this from my library, and it took like a million years, I swear to God, for the book to finally get into my hands, just because the waiting list was so long. But this is a memoir of a woman who grew up in a survivalist family in Idaho, and ended up educating herself and, going to BYU, and I think she ended up going to Cambridge or Harvard. So this was, I really liked it a lot. I don't know, I've heard some people, questioning, is this actually real? Is this exaggerated? I can't say anything about that, but I went to undergrad in Utah, and I know a lot of Mormon families. I know a lot of people from Idaho, and I can definitely, so that part of it was special just because I know what she's talking about, and just how the culture is out there. But I thought this was really inspiring. It's just incredible how she managed to just get out on her own and actually educate herself without going to elementary school or high school. It was just very inspiring. Some of the things that she experienced growing up were just heartbreaking. I do not know, the book read like fiction. It didn't seem like this could actually be real life. So that was a book that I would highly recommend. I don't think it's something I would reread because, now I know her story. But I think it's certainly one worth picking up, at least from the library. So the final book I'm going to talk about this month is Sweep of the Blade by Ilona Andrews. It's the 4th book in the Innkeeper Chronicles series. So this followed the main character from the first 3 books' sister. So in this book, it's a lot of it's basically only vampires, some werewolves, I guess. I've really loved all of the books. But basically the main character in the first 3 books is an innkeeper, so a human, and she has an inn where assorted creatures from various alternate worlds, just other worlds can go to have a safe space and travel to get to different worlds. It's a really unique series, I think. I basically love every single thing that Ilona Andrews has ever written. But yeah, so this is a really enjoyable book. I'm glad to see that the quality remained pretty high. Just loved it. So I think with that, those are all of the many books that I read this month. Hopefully you've made it through to the end. With that, I think I will sign off here, and I will see you guys in my next video.